Me, it's having it in your hand. That's the thing, you know, just being able to have it in your hand and say, I have it here.
This is one of the last few stores like this in the entire country. There's just a few video stores left like this.
Yeah, we lost over 75% of our customers.
We have things that have never been streaming, may never be streaming, may be removed from streaming next week or next month.
As far as those thousands of films that you can see around me, they'll just go into a storage unit.
How's it going, everybody? It's been a bit. I took a little bit of a hiatus, and the reason that I wanted to come back and kind of the catalyst for this video, about 2 weeks ago, I read an article from the Seattle Times talking about this amazing physical media store in Seattle called Scarecrow Video. When I went to Seattle last year, I just had the very fortunate circumstances to just kind of walk by it and walk in. And if you don't know what this video store is, it is arguably one of the most impressive piece of physical media stores I've ever been into. It is, I think it houses one of the largest physical media collection anywhere in the entire US. And it's so important that even the state of Washington deemed it a cultural museum. And when I went and visited it, it was just the coolest fucking place ever. Movies and topics and subjects, things that I've never heard about, and I saw movies that I've never heard about and learned new things. And they're a really cool store with really cool people. And it really sucks to read that Seattle Times article seeing that they are at risk of going under. When I was doing research on this video, it kind of sucked to discover that this is not the first time they've actually had this issue. Back in 2014, they had to start a Kickstarter in order to also basically keep the lights on. And that looks like it kind of lasted for about 10 years. And now here we are where they are at risk of losing their business or losing the location. And the reason that this kind of compelled me and also kind of made me a little bit sad is if this store went away in 2014, that just kind of sucks. I would have never gotten a chance to go there. I would have never bought a couple movies. I never would have bought this shirt. I really would have never had that experience to learn, to observe, to browse the shelves, and to know that 10 years ago that this was happening to people, and then now in 2024, people in the future are at risk of not being able to check out this store is something that I'm deeply passionate about. Not just the Scarecrow Video, even though if you're in the Seattle area, you should definitely check it out, but just the idea of this slow, sad death of physical media. And when I say that, I kind of mean a few different things. The first is I mainly am talking about movies, physical Blu-rays, this whole stuff over here, right here, where you go into stores, you buy Blu-rays, you buy 4Ks, you buy this little thing right here, and the slow death of this art form, of this physical piece of media, is something that I am kind of feeling now more than ever. The second catalyst for this, though, is actually in the start of 2024, at the end of 2023, Best Buy and Target, they announced that Best Buy, I think, is entirely cutting away outside of, I think, major locations, selling Blu-rays, selling 4Ks, selling DVDs in their stores, and Target is drastically cutting back. And that also means a lot to me because I'm from small town Massachusetts. I really didn't have a lot of avenues to shop when I got really into movies and really into Blu-rays when I was starting in high school, and the idea of collecting and the idea of owning, those were the only two stores near me. I didn't have anywhere else. And now that I have left LA, one of the major epicenters for film outside of LA and New York, where there are movie stores across everywhere. I lived literally a block away from Cinephile, one of the coolest movie stores in all of LA that I've seen. And moving away from that back to small town Massachusetts has really left this kind of giant hole when it comes to being able to go to a store, to browse, to talk, to discover things that I would have never even thought about watching or ever even heard about unless I walked into that physical media store. And it kind of got me thinking that a lot of people in the US are probably experiencing this in some capacity. I mean, I used to go to those two stores near me when Black Friday sales would happen, and I used to spend $50 of my high school money when I was working part-time jobs just to get these deals, and it was the best time of my life, is that Friday after Black Friday, being able to go to a Best Buy or a Target and see what amazing deals they have. When I was doing research for this video, it was actually pretty interesting to see how other forms of physical media were doing. As I was making booktube videos on this channel for a long time, it's actually pretty interesting to see how books are kind of at a stagnant growth right now. They're still way up from where they were, I believe, during the COVID pandemic era, but bookstores and books are actually doing pretty good. I actually kind of attribute that a lot to, well, one, the rise of stuff like booktube, but booktok, but also, and this is something that I found kind of interesting moving back home, is there are just more used bookstores than places that sell movies. There are actually quite a number of really good used bookstores near me. Stuff where you can walk in, you can get 5 books for $40, and they're all really, really amazing. And I think the books are always going to be doing well because of stuff like that. And the second piece of physical media that I found really interesting was music, specifically vinyls. And vinyls are kind of trending. They're obviously like kind of like an it thing right now, which is really, really cool to see. There's some really great like pieces of media, the artwork, the cover work and everything. But I mean, those are just in a drastic increase. A lot of them is due to like Taylor Swift releasing all of her music on vinyl as well. But also, again, there are more vinyl shops, specific vinyl shops in Massachusetts near me than there are anywhere that sell movies. And it's pretty interesting to see how they are being treated and what's kind of happening to them. And I think this kind of leads into the larger kind of meat of what I want to talk about here today. And it's really like a discussion about streaming services and the impact that they're having on physical media, specifically with movies. It's pretty interesting to see that like a digital version of books, like a Kindle or like a Nook and stuff like that, are popular still, but they kind of came and went in some regards. I even have one myself that I use, and it doesn't compare to a book in any capacity. And I wonder if the survival of books as a physical media are going to be tied to the fact that there's no really way to take away the physical aspect of it. Yes, you can read stuff online, and yes, there's probably a larger discussion about even like attention spans being deteriorated through kind of like the scrolling platforms of social media. And I feel pretty comfortable being like, I think books are going to be okay. Obviously, they are a long-standing art form. And I know there's also a larger discussion to be had about vinyls and specifically streaming music and how companies like Spotify are just kind of fucking over the people and the musicians and the actual artists who make the music by paying them like pennies on the dollar for their music that is going mega, mega popular, mega viral. And that's really, really interesting to kind of see that then that movies, physical media, are the one thing that's slowly being phased out. And I know that when we talk about like art, I think for me, when I talk about art, my mind immediately goes to paintings or books. And sometimes it is interesting to consider film as a form of art, specifically when I'm talking about physical media. But what seems to be the case here, and as evident by the fact that physical media sales are drastically decreasing. They are going down and they are only getting worse. And the cost of streaming services going up, but also the cost of people spending for PVOD, buying stuff on Amazon or online to rent and watch online, is also drastically increasing. And it feels like physical media, when it comes to movies, is an art form that is slowly being eroded away. Speaking of all these movies, not a shameless self-promotion, actually a pretty shameless self-promotion. My friend Matt's Bookshelf and I actually have a movie podcast called Film Frauds, where we talk about basically like modern classics, search for modern classics, I should say, where we basically take a look at movies to see if they will eventually be a modern classic. And we also talk about new releases. We're doing, like, we go through directors. We talk about directors. It's basically another movie podcast. It's basically two white guys with a podcast. But, I have fun with it. I think it's a good time. So if you can, it's on Apple Podcast. It's on basically every major podcast. So if you can, leave a review, leave a like, let me know what you think. We love and appreciate all feedback, and give us some recommendations to talk about, because we still have a lot to go through. The first thing that kind of spiked my interest when I was thinking about kind of making this video and talking about it was really just like, well, what's replacing physical media in terms of movies? And obviously it's streaming services. And I remember finding this like Fortune article, or Forbes article, I should say, that kind of broke down the top 10 streaming services. And it's pretty interesting. I mean, number one is Netflix, and then it's Amazon Prime, and then it's Disney. And then you have stuff like Max, like Paramount, Hulu, Peacock, ESPN Plus, Apple TV, even Starz. Though I don't know a single person who has a Star subscription, which I think is kind of interesting. But those are actually the top 10 streaming services and the most popular ones that are out there. And I was really curious first to kind of see like what the cost of these streaming services are now, because if you're me, I have subscribed to these streaming services and the money just gets taken out of my bank account, and then I occasionally get an email and it's like, HBO Max is now $16.99 a month. And you're like, all right, well, I guess that's $17 gone that I'm not going to argue about. Or like, I forgot I had Apple TV Plus for a bit, and all of my girlfriend and I are just watching Defending Jacob on Apple Plus, and we're watching currently Presumed Innocent. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess I've been getting charged $9 a month, which is something I kind of want to talk about there. Why are these numbers important? Why am I even talking about streaming services here when it comes to physical media? And there's a few different things here, and a few different things I actually found which is pretty interesting. One is 4K. And 4K is a really interesting thing to talk about, because 4K is the next evolution when it comes to like Blu-ray home physical media. The quality's better. There's oftentimes more kind of like effort in terms of bonus content put into 4K releases. There's a really great one which I'll talk about in a second that basically sold out, which was some like a weird outlier that I want to talk about. But I found some kind of interesting correlations that I thought was really weird. And one, when all physical media, when it comes to Blu-rays, when it comes to DVDs, are in a massive decline, the one that's actually increasing is 4K Blu-rays. Not a lot, mind you. I mean, the total revenue of physical media when it comes to movies is down across the board. But 4Ks, almost as like special events, special releases, are becoming massively popular. There was actually an example where Oppenheimer, great movie, Best Picture winner of last year, came out on 4K and Blu-ray, and it sold out. And I remember being in LA when that came out because I wanted that day one because I went to watch it again, and I couldn't find a 4K Blu-ray. I had to settle for a regular one. What made this really interesting was specifically like kind of like the scummy practices of streaming services and their pricing. 4K TVs, their total revenue and the amount of people buying them is increasing. The number of people buying 4K TVs and 4K capable players, which is like Xbox, PS4, Blu-ray players and whatnot, is increasing. The market for that is only growing and growing and growing. So what's pretty scummy is that Netflix and HBO Max basically hide their premium streaming capabilities behind an even higher paywall. I don't know if you guys have a 4K TV or watch anything on 4K, but I mean, these TVs are getting fucking incredible. The quality of them is just jarring at times. And what's pretty interesting is that Netflix and HBO Max are basically hiding their good quality besides paying more. And if you are someone who has a 4K TV that's a really great quality, if you're streaming on some of these streaming services, sometimes the quality is utter garbage and you notice it more on a 4K TV. And that means you're going to want to pay more for these streaming services, which in then turn makes you basically spend more on this like actual art form. So why is this important? And why is this important to me? And what can we really do about it? Or what can even I do about it? The first thing in terms of why it's important, and I think a lot of it comes down to one, an economy. I mean, the sheer number of streaming services and costs behind them is just really, really jarring. And in a world where major sources of stability, income, rent, food, salary, are all getting, I mean, in case salary like is stagnant, but like the major things of living are becoming higher and higher and higher, it's harder and harder to pay and justify spending over $100 a month on multiple streaming services. And I think there's also an aspect of this that has been really on my mind, and it's this idea of kind of consumer control. And a lot of this is like pure subjective kind of criticism on my part. And obviously, as evident by, let's say, someone like Mike Flanagan. And if you don't know who Mike Flanagan is, he is arguably pound for pound, probably the most watched horror director of the 2015 to 10s and on. I mean, every single major horror show, Haunting of Hill House, that other one with the vampires, I'm pretty sure was all Mike Flanagan. He's done multiple very successful horror movies. He has been on the record for basically saying that Netflix is openly hostile to the idea of putting stuff on physical media. And when you have someone like Mike Flanagan, who is arguably one of the most bankable horror directors in Hollywood right now, and not only that, his quality of his movies are quite good, it really got me thinking about like movies that I just don't have access to on physical media and what that means and what that kind of entails for the future. And it got me thinking about a couple of releases that kind of, I just don't know if they're going to have physical media releases. The first one is, do you guys remember that movie, I'm Thinking of Ending Things, that Charlie Kaufman movie that came out either 2020? I think it was 2020. And there's no physical media release for it. And I'm assuming, based on Mike Flanagan's comments, that Netflix is really only focused on subscriptions and is openly hostile to the idea of putting stuff out on physical media. I'm never going to be able to get a chance to own that. And there's something I think a little nefarious about that in some capacity. And when I talk about consumer control and when I talk about kind of a lot of other stuff that is really important to me with movies, I think it just comes down to the idea of Netflix could take away that movie if they wanted to. They could get rid of it. They could do whatever they want with it. It's on their streaming service, and nobody can really do anything with it. And if they decide that they want it gone, it can be gone. And, you know, there are other illegal ways to watch movies, but I mean, that doesn't support the creator. That doesn't support Kaufman. That doesn't support local businesses or these stores where you can buy the physical media. It's weird. And the same thing goes with something like Killers of the Flower Moon, a monumental film last year in 2023, up for multiple Oscars. I mean, it's a really phenomenal movie, and there's no physical media release in sight, and it exists right now solely on Apple TV+. Companies like this want to sell subscriptions. Netflix want to sell subscriptions. They basically want you paying each and every month. So obviously, they are probably not going to remove a lot of their staples, the things that bring them in money. But we're kind of saying that, being like, oh, they'll never do anything with it. Well, I mean, Warner Brothers just killed like a completed movie that was pretty good. I think Coyote versus Acme, that people were like, that was a good movie, and they killed it for tax purposes. They've actually done that twice. They did it to a Batgirl movie, which was almost done, I think, and then a Coyote versus Acme movie, which was genuinely done because they wanted a tax write-off and they didn't think it'd be profitable. And I mean, when I say stuff like that and I say like, oh, Netflix wants your money, we are putting our whims of an art form and the survival of an art form on the whims of $1 billion company whose goal is to make money. And I don't trust that. I don't believe in the goodwill of these companies to make money. And I know there's also like a double-edged sword. Like Netflix is actively giving money to creators to make movies that major releases and major studios wouldn't do. And I get there is a legitimate like goodness that can come with streaming services and like the idea of just like being exposed and it being more accessible to people. I get that. But when you hold like a piece of art at the whim of a company, that if that piece of art is no longer profitable, they will get rid of it. They just will. They will. Their whole goal is to make more money. And their whole goal is not the preservation of an art form. Their goal is not to keep something alive that gives me meaning, that gives a lot of people meaning, that gives these like experiences into other worlds and people and things that I talk about with books. It's the same type of thing. They're stories, they're fiction, they keep us going. They're the arts. And to trust $1 billion company with the survival of this, it's just not really like gonna happen, I feel like, in some capacity. I mean, you're kind of seeing that already. And when I'm talking about consumer control, it just kind of means, at least like when I think about it, is if I own more movies, and if I own the capability to just watch whatever I want on a whim because I own them physically, I'm less likely to pay for a Netflix subscription. I'm less likely to forget about my Netflix subscription. Apple TV Plus has probably gotten at least $100 from me at this point without even me just kind of forgetting about it at times. And I know that's really stupid. I should probably be on top of that. But like, that's kind of what they're banking on, is you pay these subscriptions to watch their exclusive content on their website. And that's it, because they want you to be there. But if I have no way of owning this, or if we don't have no way of owning this, then we like ownership, we don't have anything. We rent, and it's kind of the same thing. Like if I buy these movies digitally on Amazon, what if Amazon just decides to get rid of my account? Do I lose access to this movie? You bet I do, because those are all tied to my account. Ownership and renting and everything like that, there are larger topics about that, but if I don't own these, they're not mine, and I can't do what I want with them. And that's really weird, because this is an art form. It's not like it's like rent or a landlord. It's, which I know is also important, I should say, but this is important. This point might not make any sense, but like this kind of stuff, this survival of an art form being wholly on the goodwill of $1 billion company, I just don't think is really long-term sustainable. I also think just that when like the pioneers and the really important people of this art form are actively speaking in favor of physical media is something that I will typically lean towards, and not in favor of these $1 billion companies. Christopher Nolan, James Cameron, Guillermo del Toro, all three of them have been pretty big advocates of the physical streaming. Wes Anderson is a big advocate of physical streaming. All these guys who make really, really amazing films recognize the importance of it. And I would rather listen to them than really anyone else. And I think when I was talking with Olive, she brought up this really good point. And this might be a little subjective, and, you know, there's no I have no basis for this in any fact or any research I could find. But movies, like the removal of physical media, it feels like it's the one form of physical media that when that physical media is removed, it completely damages the authenticity of that form of media. When it's just available on streaming, with the rise in AI, with the rise in really any of like major algorithmic content, it damages an art form. And if we can't control the base of it, which is owning stuff when it comes out of theaters, so we can have, if I want to watch it 100 times, I don't have to, if I want to watch it basically at the beginning of the month and at the end of the month, all of a sudden it's not on Netflix, I now have to check to see what streaming service it's on, and then I have to pay more money, and so on and so forth. And that really sucks, man. I'm not going to lie. That really makes me sad, because this is some of the most important things to me, owning this stuff, talking about it, watching it, diving into an art form. I think I've made that very clear over the time that, like, I just want people to experience this kind of stuff. And it's weird because at the same time, streaming services are also kind of beneficial because they are a majorly accessible form for people to watch an untold number of films, an untold number of TV shows. I mean, the number is truly like endless at times. And that's good and really bad at times, because these streaming services are ruled by an algorithm that basically recommends and views your habits and basically is trying to keep you on the app as long as possible because they want to sell ads, because that's how they make their money. And these algorithms are a double-edged sword, because you can train these algorithms to actually give you some really cool shit, some really good movies. And at the same time, they can also bury some really amazing pieces of art for them. It's pretty shocking when, like, sometimes I go to type in a movie, let's say on like Netflix or Amazon, how far I have to get into writing the name of it before I can actually see the movie, because it's being hidden behind other shows that are been deemed by whatever data they have that these shows keep people on that platform for longer, and it just kind of sucks. But again, it is exposing people to the far reaches of cinema and film history, and with that, it is pretty fucking awesome. I can't deny. Some of my favorite stuff is being able to, like, go on the recently added for Amazon Prime and just seeing what they have. This form of digital kind of just like bookstore browsing, I think, is an expression. But at the same time, it does remove a lot of the ability to just control what you own and control what you have. And it kind of sucks, and it kind of makes me sad. So what can I do about it? What can we all do about it? I don't know. It kind of makes me sad to kind of admit that. I mean, we can speak with our wallets, but then again, there are far, far, far more important things in the world happening right now, whether it's the just things are expensive, or politics, or global conflicts, or anything are obviously more important than, you know, my little movies over here and the importance of it. But this, I don't know, this is an art form. This matters. This matters to somebody. It matters to me. And, you know, we can speak with our wallets to the best of our abilities. We can consistently, you know, form and do what we can. And I think that's important. But, I mean, if you came to me looking for larger answers, I mean, billions of dollars have gone into this stuff to basically get me to lose. And you know what? Sometimes it does beat me, and I do what I can. But yeah, I think that brings us to the end of the video. I think I've said everything I want to say. This is very scattered. This is basically my return from recording. It's been basically a year, if we're being honest. It's been a bit. So I really just kind of wanted to say thank you guys for being patient. And as always, go check out my friends Drunzo and Matt's Bookshelf. They're always creating great content. And yeah, it's good to be back. But I hope you guys have a nice day. I hope you guys are having a good time. I hope everybody's doing well. I hope you're all enjoying that Criterion sale at Barnes & Noble. And yeah, all right. Have a nice day, guys. And I'll see you again soon.